Mr. Mutua Matheka.
Yes.
Great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
What personal story defines you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a story, but I think there's some moments that I've had in my life. One that I can remember that was particularly insightful because I was in university in my first year and I failed a class. And I remembered that for me, this was a big deal. It was the first time I ever failed at anything since I'd been born. I was used to, like in school, I'm not like on the top of the class, but I never was in the failures. I was always like best of the rest. So like midpoint, top midpoint or so. So failing in this class was I took it harder than I probably should have. And the thing is, it was the first time I think in my life that I realized, because I was in my room, I was just sad about it, thinking, okay, what are the consequences? I have to come back over the holiday. I've failed people. It's like I have to go tell my mom I've failed a class. It's very hard when you're a student and that's all you do, to say that you failed a class, because it's like unaulizwa ni kazi gani unafanya ingine. All you are here for, all you're there to do is to study. That's the only thing you have to do and do well. So it hit me that day. I think it was the first time also in my life that it hit me that anything that I do in my life, all consequences to any of my actions are my own. That's when I realized that, my parents, people in my family can be sad. They can be sad, people can be disappointed, but nobody can go through the consequences of this but me.
Apart from watching cartoon during breakfast, tell us an interesting thing or a fun fact about you.
Some people might know that I'm a night owl. I'm absolutely useless in the morning. Absolutely useless. Anytime before 10 in the morning, I'm useless. So maybe that's something. And my brain starts to get awake at 9 in the evening. 9 in the evening, if you're with me, my mind is starting to go like this. I'm starting to think about deep things, serious things. That's when I can hold deep conversations if anyone needs me. 9 onwards till around 3 in the morning.
What's your routine like? How do you handle your days?
When it's up to me, my day will start at midday. I'm going to make breakfast. For me, making my own breakfast is like a ritual that I feel I have to do. That 30 minutes making my own breakfast, my coffee is a big deal to me. Make that, sit down, watch cartoons. That again could be 30 minutes to about an hour. By the time that is done, then I go into physical things that don't need my brain really. So it could be editing if I have deadlines. If I don't have deadlines, it could be something else outside. It could be the garden. It could be the garden. It could be setting up for something. It could be physical things if stuff needs to be done around the house. So that's the time that I put for mindless, to me, like mindless things. That time, kids come home from school around 4, 5. So then it's small father time because they also have their own homework, chores and things like that. Then from around 6:30, 7, I go work out. I'm back maybe 9. Then from there it's shower, get down, dinner, spend some time with my wife, and then after she goes to bed, then it's work time from around 11 midnight till maybe 4, 5 in the morning, and then sleep and start all over.
If you were to take Mutua Matheka and compress him into 2 words that define his personality, which words will this be and why?
Creative and fun. Intense might also be one of the words.
Could you expand on that? Why would you use those
words? Just I feel like intense, I will pick that because might be an over whatever, but I feel like when I'm focused on something or when I'm obsessed about something, I can be really obsessive about that thing. Whatever that thing is, it might be learning how to cook a specific dish, it might be learning how to create something or to learn a new skill. But physically, when I'm involved in something, I get into this rabbit hole. And so if it's work, I might not leave my desk for about 3 hours, 4 hours, just continuously, because I'm just trying to get the thing. I'm intense into the thing. So I think when I'm focused on some things, I can be intense about them. But also at the same time, I think when I'm focused on like fun things, for me, I think that's a huge part of, I try with my work to have fun. I try to enjoy my life. If I feel like I haven't had fun in a long time, it starts to bother me, and I start to figure out ways I can make sure that I bring more fun into things that I do.
How did that early environment influence your artistic nature or inclinations per se?
I'd say that was all my mom. For me, I don't think it was the being in Machakos itself. It was more like the neighborhood I grew in. My mom was a teacher, and so I lived in a college where that's where I grew up, basically, most of primary school, from when I was trying to be a practicing artist. And so my mom was one of those people who, when you have strong interest, not even strong interest, when you have basic interest in anything, she will find you a tutor. You go, you touch a piano just for fun, the next week you're in piano classes. So she was also intense in that way, where she's like, your talents have to be, like, you have to nurture your talents, you have to focus on your talents. So when she found out that I loved to draw, because I started way early in life, like before, in the toddler stage, 3 years old, and then like most kids, just drawing, but then it stuck with me longer. So by the time, I think I was in standard 3 or 4, I had an art tutor, one of our colleagues, and I used to take my work to her every week. We had a weekly session, about 1 hour. I take all my sketches for the week, and she critiques them, either the color, the drawing, the scale. Like, she critiques them as a art teacher. So for me, I think I always knew that I was gonna do art in some shape or form. I just never knew that it would be a career. So like, even with my mom, strangely enough, is that she encouraged you so much. She never believed in you taking your talents for granted, but at the same time, she never thought of the art as a career. She knew, you're an architect, you're going to do that as your job, but then I don't expect you to stop drawing as your talent because you're an architect. I expect you to still nurture your talents. So yeah, in that way, it was a place that nurtured me because of the things and the opportunities that were there.
What's a key takeaway or an experience on that journey that impacted you the most?
The whole goal of Unscrambling Africa is to document every African capital. And the thing is, when you do a trip like that, an undertaking like that, which for me, I didn't know anyone who'd done anything like that before, especially down south for the sake of just shooting. So you have to rely on information that is from other people, and you have to rely on people to kind of tell you how things will be. And the thing is, a lot of the information that's there online is from white people, because they're the ones who've done a lot of these trips across Africa. And now the thing you realize very quickly by being on the trip is that the doors that are open for a white person in Africa are very different from the doors that are open to me. The experience a white person will have traveling in Africa is very different from the experience I will have traveling in Africa. And so I needed to document an African or Black experience, because that is the one that will help other Africans or other Black people. It will be very different from a white person. And for me, one of the biggest impacting, I think there's so many, it's almost like in every country you discovered something. But I think one of the biggest things were in maybe 3 places. Malawi was a very surprising place, especially because as a country that is on paper so poor, it felt like the people there are in very little need. You know, like the food is so affordable in Malawi. Actually, it's ridiculously cheap. With at that time, I don't know if things have changed, but at that time, like with 200 bob, you could eat ugali and a whole fish, or like a half chicken. And for me, that was ridiculous. So I'm like, do you want to be poor on paper because you don't actually go to work? Or would you rather have a house, like most of those people, have a house with a view of the lake and a farm behind you where you grow your food, and literally in that lake, if you just take your own boat, you can feed your family in less than a minute. I was watching a fisherman just put the thing inside. In about 20 seconds, he's pulled it out with a fish. He's not even far. He's like 20 meters. He's not going far into the lake. And in about 1 minute to 5 minutes, he has like 5 fish or more, enough for the family, or enough to go sell or trade for something. And so for me, that really messed with my head in the way that you're like, okay, I can see how someone like this does not need, if the only goal in life you have is to feed your family and to eat healthy and have a purpose to life, they might not need job or GDPs or things like that. In Gaborone, which is in Botswana, we received so much kindness from somebody who did not know us before. They just met us at a restaurant. I mean, they saw from Instagram and they came to meet us and they're like, okay, so what's your plan? We said, we're just trying to figure out where this place, our Airbnb, we don't even know where it is because the location was very arbitrary. And we say, we don't know where this house is, first of all. And she was like, okay, let's go. And so that helped. And then for the whole week that we were there, she was so instrumental in just helping us for no, like we never asked for it, but she just went out of her way to help us out. And with no ask, with nothing, just for these people who need some help. And so I think we've experienced a lot of kindness like that in so many places that we did not expect. Many places that we knew nobody, we'd never been to. So that's one thing about, I think, the continent that makes me want to travel a lot more, because I think we need more interaction than we need separation.
What's your approach when collaborating with such brands in a way that gives you creative control over your vision?
One of the ways to make sure that you kind of keep your integrity or kind of, keep your focus as a creator, you kind of have to be firm about the things, or at least know. First of all, know what your lines are. Know what you cannot cross, what you're not willing to cross, rather, in terms of your work, in terms of your values, whatever it is that is important to you. For some people, it's my line is money. For some people, their line is morality. For some people, their line is creative control. So figure out your line, which beyond this, we are not crossing that. And then once you have that line and you understand why, then it becomes easier to manage a lot of these relationships with brands or even other people. And for me, I've always had some lines of where I don't want things to get blurry when working with people generally. I know beyond here is going too much into a gray area that I'm not happy about. And so that helps me anytime I'm talking to them. Sometimes the most obvious line is money, but that one, you find that there are people who will have that money easily. And then now you have to ask yourself, okay, they have the money, but do I have another line, or is the line just money? So for me, you might have the money, but there's some things in terms of what I want to achieve with my work, in terms of my copyrights and the ownership of my work. Some things like those are very important to me. So I try to make sure that find a balance. And I think for most people, they're willing to talk, One thing that somebody told me very early in my career is that every contract is a negotiation. I think my view was like a contract is something written in stone, and I've found so many people approach it like that. It's like they've sent me a contract. What do I do? Because they feel like the contract has to be signed as it is. And me realizing that all a contract is a negotiation, is someone saying, these are the first words. And I look at it, I'm like, I'm not happy about this paragraph because I feel like this paragraph is taking too much. Can we adjust that to this and this and this? And from that time, it's been nice because then people can always, whatever company can always be like, that one is a non-negotiable for us. And then I can easily say, okay, the money was good, but I have to let it go.
How do you go about owning your project?
The biggest problem I find is that many of us creatives never think beyond this project. For lack of a better word, and this might actually seem rude, sometimes also we never think beyond the stomach. The real enemy is poverty. And so sometimes the money becomes the blinding factor. The money is flashed and you're like, okay, you don't see anything else. So whether it's ownership, you're like, they can have the work, they can use it however they want. They're paying me a lot of money, might as well, but we've not really thought about, okay, what does it mean when this company can actually take what you've made and be able to use it in perpetuity on all platforms? If someone is looking at this work in 50 years from now, will it be a meaningful project? Will it be will it say something at that time? Will it say something about now in the future? And so when I think about things that way, suddenly they increase in meaning. Because even now, for you, when you look at some of the pictures that your parents took of themselves, even maybe in the 80s when they were in university or something like that, to them, those pictures, they're fun in the moment. But to you, those pictures are not just fun pictures from your parents. They tell you about who you are. Those pictures tell you about your past. They make you understand things about yourself that you never thought you'd understand from a picture that was taken 50 years ago. So I find it amazing how photos can tell you so much. Things that happened in the past tell us so much about the present and sometimes the future. So when you start thinking about it that way, then you start seeing the power of things that you're doing now in the future.
Which project would you say was the most challenging, and what challenges did you face, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Unscrambling Africa in itself, I think, is the biggest challenge that I've ever had, just because there's a financial challenge, there's a logistic challenge, there's a production challenge, there is a travel challenge, that every time is like a very wholesome project, holistic project that if it was a production for a client, is a project that will take 5 to 10 people just on logistics and planning and things like that, without even counting the artists and the photographers. And we have to do this as just 2 to 4 people. And so that has been the biggest challenge. The last time that we did the South African one, it ended up costing 3 times more than it was planned to cost, ended up taking double the time that it was gonna take. And it's still going on. But then before I go back to doing the other regions, West, Central, East Africa, North Africa, I've learned so much from doing the South African one that financially, whatever budget I have for a trip, I am only living when I have double or triple that money. Like if I think it's going to cost, if I do my math and everything and I find the project is going to cost 3 million, I'm going to try find 9 million because of what I've learned from the time before. If I feel like I'm going to just wing it when I go there, and I'm a person who likes to just wing it because I feel like planning too much sometimes can stop you from doing things. But with that one, it kind of worked. Sometimes it worked for, sometimes it worked against. So I don't consider that a failure because we learned so much, but I'm trying, the balance now that I'm trying to reach is where for the next ones, I don't plan too much that it becomes like a crutch, but also I don't wing it too much that the winging it holds us back. Finding that balance.
What sources of funding do you tap into? And what sort of value do you communicate in order to access such funding?
I feel for too long, our creative sector has been driven by grants, and at the risk of, being cancelled by anybody who would want to give me a grant, please still give me grants. But what I'm saying is, I think my take is that if an art industry is mostly shaped by grants, then that art industry has the possibility of not being authentic. Because no matter what they say, most grants, maybe not all, but most grants, more than 90%, have their own agenda and goals. And agendas are not necessarily a bad thing, but people who give you money have a thing that they're trying to achieve, whatever it is. So someone wouldn't give you money if you don't fit into the achieve or what they want to achieve. So in that way, grant giving cannot be fully democratic. It will have to be a dictatorship by the people that have the money. And so if people that have money have a specific goal and agenda, then it's possible for them to use artists to achieve that agenda. And so to me, I just feel like the whole art industry should not be driven just by grants. Grants are a fantastic way to uplift people who might never get an opportunity otherwise. But I think if grants take care of maybe a quarter of an art industry, that's better than if it's majority. That said, for that to happen, we have to have a creative industry that is thriving financially. And this can only happen if also financial groups and investors see the potential of that, just like they see in building all of these empty houses that don't have people in it. Like, keep saying, people who want to wash money, wash them in art also. Wash with artists. That might not be the best financial advice. But like, there's so many artists who you can invest in now and get returns in the future. And so I feel that's the one place that becomes tough. For me, because I've always struggled with getting grants. I've gotten some grants in my life that kind of aligned with the thing that I was doing. But one way, like for the first Unscrambling Africa, we actually crowdfunded and people gave us money. People believed in the vision, gave us money, and we were able to do the trip based on that. And then the second part of it happened from getting a grant from Africa No Filter, a fellowship that I was invited into. And with that fellowship, I got a grant, and the grant was exactly in line with what I was doing, so that I didn't need to change anything I was doing to fit into the grant, which is exactly how I think this thing should go. So I think if there was a way, I don't know how, that more people could be involved, because I think that could drive everything higher. There's so much potential in the art world. And I realized this by doing my exhibition Fragments last year, because I needed to, the things that I had for sale, like it was driven by commerce. I had things for sale. Things that needed money to produce. And people were interested in them because they were dope things and people bought the things. But then I'm lucky and fortunate that the people I partnered with, the people that made the things that I made, companies like Ramage Studios, that were able to make things for me, basically front money, because they made things for me that I would have had to pay for upfront. And after I sold some of those things, I paid them. Now, I don't know if they will do this for everyone, but like that for me was a major thing. It really helped. And I really want to find ways to tap into the financial community more, because I think this space needs to grow. And it's holding, but so many artists have been held back by the fact that they don't have access to finance. Just the same way for people who want to open a kiosk and you just need a small loan, 200,000, and you know that you will sell things that make that money if you're given 2 months, 6 months to pay back the money. There's so many photographers who, if they had an investment of about 200, 300,000, they could get the equipment that enables them to be working every weekend, and they could pay back that money in less than 6 months. So I think there's potential.
Over the past decade, you've been doing fragments.
Yeah.
When you look back, how does it shape your artistic journey, and what does it mean to you exactly?
I find that long-term projects are grounding, because looking at the same subject over 10 years, for example, you start to see things very different. You start to engage with the subject differently. It grows you as an artist because you have to find interesting, you have to observe small things that are changing about that subject. So whether the subject is your family or a building or a group of people that you're following, or even wildlife, the people who follow these cubs, I think it's so important for an artist to have some long-term project, something that grounds you. So even as you change, then it's very interesting to see your view of the thing changing based on you changing. The thing has not changed, but your opinion and your views about it has changed just because of the fact that you've grown. The way I see Nairobi now is very different from the way I saw it 10 years ago. I'm more open in the way that I just allow the city to not have intense opinions on the city and just allow the city to inspire me as it is. That's not how I was when I was younger. I see a lot more details now than I saw back then. In the same way, in a different way, I can observe the change of the freedom that I have in the city. So whether the freedoms that I had were more, and then they reduced, and then they're back there. The way I can operate and move through certain streets and places, the way it changes, it's something I'm able to observe in myself. And so I think it makes me grow so much as an artist, but also makes the other work that I make better.
Is there a particular city that has a stereotype that you have challenged with your photography?
I think I'm going to say Nairobi, because I've photographed Nairobi from when Nairobi was Nairobi to when it became Nairobi. And I think it's a perception thing. And it doesn't mean that the Nairobi was a lie. It's just saying that when you see something as one thing only, it even influences the way you interact with the place. Because people who interact with Nairobi as Nairobi and people who interact with Nairobi as Nairobi have very different feelings in the city. And you can tell by the way they talk about the city. And so I think for me it will be Nairobi. Nairobi to Nairobi, that was a fantastic pipeline.
You're a father now.
Yes.
How has that influenced your perspective on the stories you choose to tell through your work?
There was something about being a father that gave me so much joy that creativity stopped giving me that much joy as much as fatherhood. And so I would sit to work and it wasn't fun. So I'd just go play with my son. And that made me realize, like it took me time to realize that I was in a creative rut, because it took about 3 months to be like, wait, I thought all this time work was just being not fun, but actually I'm blocked. Things are not flowing. And so it took 3 months to even understand that I was in a block, and then another 3 months to kind of work towards, okay, how do I get out of this? And I think being a father has influenced some projects that I make now, I think about them. Because you remember that future when I was saying that when I think about my projects, I see them 50 years from now. Now I have a face to attach to that, because I think about my children in terms of the way they benefit from the pictures or the stories that they see from the pictures that I make, the places I go and I come show them affects their mindsets. But at the same time, in terms of with my pictures and my cataloging and the rights and things like that, that's what I'm leaving them. Like, that's a legacy I'm leaving for them. If they work it right, they will be millionaires based on my pictures after I'm gone. So all of those things, thinking about the financial, thinking about the impact, thinking about the stories that I tell, it makes a difference now that the children are involved. And now that I'm working on a children's book, of course, they're my target. So I'm like, as they grow, the idea of the book came a couple of years back, but the children I was going to write for a couple of years back are not the kids that are there anymore. So now it's giving me pressure. I have to finish this book as soon as possible so that they can read it while they're still children. Otherwise, now it will have to be like a novel, and that I don't even know how to write novels like that. I was thinking about it as a children's book. But now I love to write it for other people's children because my children will be too grown for that book. Yeah. So I can't separate the lens with which I see them and the future and me and the future. It's like everything now is intertwined in the way that I think.
All right. How do you envision the evolution of the African urban photography?
Documentary photography in the broad term. Documentary of fashion, documentary of food, documentary of cities, documentary of personal lives, of lifestyle, are going to take even higher significance. And I say this because when I look at, I've been doing research lately because there's a video that I've been working on which is about trying to look at the history of photography in the world and trying to equate that to the history of photography in Africa. And I realized that while the rest of the world in photography had artists, not the way there were artists like Picasso doing all this abstract stuff. So the only artists that the Western world knew were painters and those kinds of artists. And so when people picked up cameras, the only thing they could see was artists like those. So they wanted to make work that looked like painters, but with cameras. But by the time the cameras came to Africa in the late 19th century, 1890s and beyond, people started not by looking at artists, started by pointing the camera to themselves. People shot more. The earliest pictures in Africa are, you could even call them fashion photography but then they were just shooting portraits. But the way those people were dressed, it's documentary, that is portraiture, that is also fashion photography. And so the evolution in Africa has always been very different from the Western evolution. And I think that importance of culture as it is will become even more important as we continue.
As you're traveling around taking pictures of African hair with the Nywele project, was there a reaction that stood out, that fascinated you?
Most fascinating thing is always how people see themselves vis-a-vis how they saw themselves before we did everything. Because when I put this call out, because I've shot the most in Nairobi, and when I ask people to come, many people are quick to tell me, oh, you know, me, I'm not a model. And I have to remind them, by the way, Nywele is not a project for models. It's a project for real people with gorgeous hair. And without fail, every single person who sees the first picture that I take, when I just set everything up and take the picture, because I shoot black and white straight from camera just so that I can see exactly how it will be after, and I show them, everyone is shocked by what they say. There's no single person I've photographed who had envisioned themselves like that.
Have you ever felt a sense of imposter syndrome? And how did you get over it?
For me, I think it manifests more as feeling inadequate or feeling ill-equipped for some things, because there's sometimes that you meet people that do such amazing things and I'm like, do they have the same time that we have? Because how are you able to achieve all of this? And especially when I see people, not necessarily people that are rich and out of my touch, and I see people that we are kind of in the same place and I'm like, I know you kind of make the same amount of money, so this is not a money thing, it's just an effort thing. Like, what have you sacrificed to achieve all of this? That's when I start asking myself, am I watching too much TV? Do I need to cut down on my TV time? Do I need to just cut down on my cartoon time so that I can achieve more? There's sometimes I really think about this and I'm like, but so far nothing has made me cut down my TV time. So I don't know if I'm the joker or is it, or I just give up before I start. I still wake up every day and I'm like, no, I'm going to watch that cartoon. That 1 hour of cartoons is happening. I don't think I'm changing my life in an hour. But I do ask myself this a lot. There's some people who achieve some things and I'm like, how are you able to achieve that?
How has marriage influenced your art?
Marriage has given me true freedom to create, both in terms of the time to go out. Like, I have someone that we help each other with the things that are there to be done. So I can get time to do some things that I will never have time to do if I wasn't married. And she can also get time to do some things that she will never be able to do if she was, say, a single mother. And that's the lens that I'm looking at. And at the same time, there is a sort of security of knowing that whatever it is that I do, whatever ways I perceive that I've failed, there will always be someone who believes in me, first and foremost. Whether I'm a successful artist or not, she's in my corner. Because she's seen me from before I was this Mutua, to when all of this was just dreams, to when I was discussing with her, I want to quit my job. And she was like, do it, we'll figure it out. So for me, having someone like that is so invaluable, because it's the one constant that I will always have, despite how people view me, for better or worse, out here. There's someone who has seen every part of the journey, and in a way that's humbling, and also it's humbling and it's encouraging.
How do you price your work without undervaluing your creativity?
So there's one thing that I do. I look at market forces and market value. I try to look at what other artists are charging their work in the country. But I look mostly what other artists that I admire, or I feel we're in the same caliber, are charging for their artwork outside the country. So I look at the American, European artists, and I'm like, okay, I think I can fairly charge there. But also at the same time, there are many other things I think about. I think about the exclusivity of the work. So those things determine what the prices will be: the exclusivity of the work, the materials that I'm printing on. If you buy a print from me for a certain amount, am I giving you a print that can last 50 years, 100 years? Or am I giving you a print that will start deteriorating in 5 years? So when I do the really cheap prints, there might not be prints that will last 50 years. But if you buy numbered pieces, most of the time, those are on high quality paper that is archival, that will last 50 years or more. So those are things I think about when determining that this is what I think the work should cost.
What's a challenge that you face in turning art into a business that people rarely talk about?
Actually, a bigger challenge for artists is seeing the creative business as a business. Because I think most of our lives, work is not equated to something enjoyable. Work is something if you're lucky, you might enjoy it, but it's something you have to do to make money. And so when something comes easy, like creativity does for most of us, then it becomes weird. You feel like you're lying by charging it where it should be, or charging it, making it as expensive as it should be, because you're like, it should not be this expensive. I had so much fun. I don't feel like it was work to me. But just because it didn't feel like work doesn't mean it was not work. If I sit and do something I love to do for 8 hours, I still sat for 8 hours to do that thing, whether I enjoyed it or not. And so I should be paid for the 8 hours that I put into the thing. And so sometimes that's the harder part, when people are trying to cost things and put these things together. Another thing that I think is very important is that a big challenge to a creative trying to make it into a business will be just how much less of actual creativity you'll be doing when it becomes a business. Before you streamline things, it feels like 90% of what you do is just creative. You're shooting, you're editing, you're doing that. But when you become serious about it and make it a business, that might come down to 30% or even less. Most of what you're doing else is putting your work out there. Now in social media, you're making videos to advertise the work that you're doing, or to show what you're doing, to share your work, to potentially attract business partners and potential clients to your work. You're filing your returns, you're updating your website, you're putting your portfolio, you're curating your portfolio, you're looking at your branding, making sure that the language of your work and the language of your communication is consistent from your website to your social media to whatever else you're putting the work out there. So all this take a toll, and most people are not ready for it. Most people will be like, this is not what I signed up for. It's too much. So that's one of the things that people are usually not ready for. But the readier you are for that, the better the transition will be into it actually being a business that is flourishing.
Tell us your biggest achievement and your biggest L so far.
When I was deep in my print, especially producing the t-shirts and stuff like that, I went ahead and ordered a lot of t-shirts without actually testing the fabric to see that it works with DTG printing. And I only discovered that I really hate the way the DTG print looks on that fabric after I'd already ordered about 100 t-shirts and spent so much money on them. And I was like, that's such a stupid mistake. Why would I do that? But then also at the time, that was not one thing I was thinking about, because I could have just gotten the fabric to test it, go print something on it, wash it, see how the print looks. I should have done that. I didn't do it. So lost all that money. I had so many t-shirts that I couldn't use. I just gave them all away, plain t-shirts, to other people who didn't really care about things like that. So that was an L that I always think about in terms of when I'm thinking about product testing with my things, to always test something before I make it available. And I think my biggest win is not even creative. It's not even in the creative world. It's probably with my family and my kids. That's one of the things that gives me the most joy, seeing them grow, seeing the thing that they love. It makes me happy. Yeah. But creatively, I think my biggest win has been fragments. That show in Fragments was a big deal. Last year, I also had a dream job, which the only thing I can say is that, because I haven't shown the work, but I got to work with a company that I really admire, a global company. So that was a big win. That was a big win.
What does excellence mean to you personally, and how do you embody it in your work on a day-to-day basis?
I think excellence means being true to you, being true to you, being true to the people that you love and that love you, and showing up the best way you can. I think that summarizes it.
Song, album, or movie best describes your life as at now and why?
Song, I think I'm really feeling like the one song at this point is this song. What's the guy called? I don't know whether it's called Alex Jean. It's called Look at My Life. And it's just, I love it. I'm at a point where I really love my life. And that song is literally that. The whole chorus is just, look at my life. I love it. So that's where I am. That song has been instrumental from like my birthday in February. I've really felt like that's where I am. I love my life. I feel blessed. Yeah, I'm at a place where I've come from a dark few years, and now I really feel happy about things generally.
Which music, book, TV show, movie, or podcast are you watching currently or listening to currently or reading currently?
The series TV that is really messing me up right now is Severance. It's ridiculous. The story of that show, the twists and turns in that show, the shooting of that show, like visually, for anybody who's interested in visuals, every frame is just a masterpiece. I think that's a fantastic show to watch just for the visuals, but also the story is ridiculously messed up in different ways. So that's a show I'm recommending to everyone at this point. A book right now, I'm reading this book by this producer with the beard. This white guy, you know him, has produced Rick Rubin. I don't know what the book is called. The Creative Act. So that's the book I'm reading right now. It's really inspirational. I've been marking it out and just gems. And what else? What else did you ask? Podcast. I've not been listening to podcasts really lately. There was a time I was deep in podcasts. Now I think I'm doing more music. And the music that's sticking out more now, what have I been listening to? I've been listening to a lot of Kenyan music. I'm a playlist person. I've not been listening too much to albums. The past few weeks have been heavy rotation on the Kenyan playlists. But in terms of body, what albums have I been listening to lately?
Or an artist you've been listening to?
I've been listening to Issa a lot lately also, like in terms of body of work. That's all I can remember at this point.
If you could collaborate with any brand or personality, who would it be?
I would want to collaborate with people that are really good with making things with their hands. I see it's something that I'm curious about, the combination of working with hands and photography. Somehow that's something that I'm curious about at this moment. I rarely think about collaborating with brands, but one of the brands that I really would have thought that would be really cool to work together, I got to work with last year. So that was, or rather adjacent, I got to work with one of their sub companies.
Yes.
So I would really like to work now with the mother company themselves. But I rarely think about, because I find that brands in themselves are rarely cool enough. You know what I mean? But I would love to work with Nike. Nike, I think, is a really cool brand that I feel like I could do such dope things with a brand like Nike.
In terms of photographers, can you name some that you feel are pushing the envelope?
I think people like Sarah Waiswa. I've always loved her work. I feel like she has a layer of documentary work that hits different. I never remember these things when they're needed. See what I told you in the beginning, that I have problems with being under pressure?
Are you under pressure?
Not like that. Anytime I'm asked a question, I blame it for fully. Anytime I'm asked a question, it feels like questions I have to name things. Always feels like I'm back doing KCP. It's very different from being asked what I think about things. Yeah. When I have to name someone, then now I'm like, when I don't need to, it's always there. I'm always like, this person, this. And then now I'm asked and suddenly it's like, they've disappeared.